The Seven Churches. Verse 11. The divine titles, I am Alpha and Omega, the first and the last, should be rejected as forming no part of what John wrote. The first title was probably inserted from verse 8, and the second from verse 17. Besides which, the speaker is not revealed, nor his titles declared, till John turns round. I turned to see the voice that spake with me. Verse 11. What thou seest write in a book, and send to the seven assemblies, to Ephesus, and to Smyrna, and to Pergamos, and to Thyatira, and to Sardis, and to Philadelphia, and to Laodicea. There were other assemblies of importance in the proconsular Asia, besides the seven specified. But the Spirit of God had a moral end in view in the choice of those particular churches, hence the definite article, the seven assemblies. The order, too, in which they are named is worthy of notice. Hengstenberg, in his commentary, remarks, Ephesus, Smyrna, and Pergamos must stand together and be separated from the rest. For these three cities, and these alone, contended for the primacy in Asia. In the separate addresses to the churches, chapters 2 and 3, there is a marked division into 3 and 4. Thus the call, He that hath an ear, 7 times repeated, occurs in the addresses to the first 3 churches before the word to the overcomer, chapter 2, verses 7, 11, and 17. Whereas in the last 4, the call to hear comes after the promise to the overcomer, chapters 2, verse 29, and 3, verses 6, 13, and 22. The assemblies are separately named. The independence of each is thus fully assured, and the responsibility of each to Christ is as distinctly taught. The vital unity of the Church as one body, and the mutual dependence of its members, are truths exclusively taught by Paul. In the first 3 chapters of the Apocalypse, the Church is, on the other hand, viewed in her public position on earth as God's light-bearer and witness. The 7 assemblies, without doubt, exhibited certain distinctly marked characteristics which separately stamp their character on the Church universal in successive stages of her history, while these same features collectively distinguish the Church throughout the earth at any given time, then and now. 2 of them, Smyrna and Philadelphia, are commended without a word of reproof. Suffering characterized the former, weakness the latter. Mingled praise and blame are meted out to Ephesus, Pergamos, Thyatira, and Sardis. Laodicea is the worst of the 7. Her state is hopeless, all is blame, without one word of commendation. In Thyatira, a remnant is for the first time recognized. 1. Ephesus. The renowned capital of the Asia of the Apocalypse, the light of Asia, was the main seat and centre of heathen idolatry. It was the stronghold of Satan's power, and from it idolatry spread all over the known world. Acts 19. The small silver shrines representing the goddess Diana were eagerly bought by strangers and set up as household deities in their distant homes, while the huge temple of the goddess, adorned and beautified by the wealth of Asia, was counted one of the 7 wonders of the world. Ephesus became the scene of a fierce conflict between the powers of light and darkness. The devoted Aquila and Priscilla laboured for some time in this idolatrous city. Previously, 12 of John's disciples had helped in a small degree to break in upon the darkness, but their efforts must have been feeble owing to their imperfect state. Acts 19. Then the eloquent Apollos gave a further impetus to the work. Paul it was, however, who seems to have broken the power of darkness and roused to fury the devotees of idolatry and superstition, as they saw the whole system, like Dagon of old, trembling before the soul-emancipating truths of Christianity. Lastly, the beloved John, after leaving his Jerusalem home, took up his residence in Ephesus, and for fully 30 years made it the centre of his work for Christ. The glory of Ephesus has departed, and the once proud heathen city is now but a miserable village. 2. Smyrna lay about 40 miles north of Ephesus, and is now one of the most important cities of the Turkish Empire. Its estimated population is about 200,000. It was anciently, in some respects, the rival of Ephesus. Its natural and commercial situation, its wealth and commerce, and the splendour of its buildings caused it to be termed the Beautiful. It was not much, if at all, behind Ephesus in idolatry. Smyrna is not named in the Acts, nor in the Pauline epistles, and we have no means of ascertaining conclusively how or when the gospel was introduced there. The stringent imperial laws against Christianity were rigorously enforced in Smyrna, chiefly through the Jews and heathen combined, who pressed the unwilling hands of the local authorities to carry into execution the persecuting edicts. Polycarp, the friend of John, was, it is said, slain here in his 90th year, AD 168, the last disciple who had personally conversed with the apostle. The fierce persecution which raged in Asia Minor had its centre in Smyrna, and is no doubt referred to in the extended address to that assembly, Revelation 2, verses 8 to 11. 3. Pergamos lay still further north. This city had little or no commerce, but was remarkable for its learning, refinement, and science, especially medicine. A long succession of kings made Pergamos, or Pergamum as the Greeks termed it, their royal residence. Its celebrated library, only second to that in Alexandria, with which it was ultimately incorporated, consisted of 200,000 books. It was here that the art of preparing skins of animals for writing upon was perfected, and from which our word parchment is derived. Thus the name of this scripturally ill-omened city, Revelation 2, verses 12 to 17, has been handed down through the Christian ages, and no doubt many a literary Pergamena manuscript of value had been prepared in Pergamos. The worship of Artemis characterizes Ephesus. Dionysius was the distinguishing deity of Smyrna. These two cities were evil, but Pergamos was preeminently so in its idolatry. The epithets, Satan's throne, and where Satan dwelleth, Revelation 2, verse 13, must have had, in the first instance, a local application to Pergamos. The most conspicuous object in the celebrated temple of Aesculapius was the wreathed serpent, behind which was Satan, that old serpent. The noble science of medicine was thus early identified with the worship of Satan, who usurped the place, functions, and titles of Christ. The names of Preserver and Saviour were applied to Aesculapius, and the cures wrought were ascribed to this chosen deity. It was, in short, substituting Satan for Christ. 4. Thyatira lay southeast from Pergamos. The road from Thyatira to Pergamos is one of the most beautiful in the world. The three cities previously named were much more noted than Thyatira, which, however, has an interest of its own. Indirectly, it connects itself with Paul's missionary labours in Europe. His first convert was a woman of Thyatira, engaged in selling the celebrated purple for which her city was famous. Acts 16, verse 14. Inscriptions yet extant show that the Guild of Dyers formed the most important trade of the city, and to this day the brilliant scarlet cloth dyed here is largely used throughout Asia and Europe, a weekly supply being sent to Smyrna. Thyatira is at present a flourishing town with a population of nearly 20,000. 5. Sardis lay about 27 miles due south from Thyatira. Sardis was anciently a proud and wealthy city, and the capital of the kingdom of Lydia. This once royal city, spite of the valour of its inhabitants, fell before the conquering hero Cyrus. With the fall of the city, the Lydian monarchy came to an end. The present name of the former capital is Sart. What a commentary on human greatness is furnished in the now degraded city of the wealthy, wise, and able Croesus. 2 or 3 shepherds inhabited a hut, and a Turk with 2 servants, at the time of Mr. Arundel's visit in 1826. In 1850, no human being was found dwelling in the once mighty and populous Sardis. 6. Philadelphia is derived from its founder Attalus Philadelphus, king of Pergamos, and it is situated about 25 miles south of Sardis. Its modern name means City of God, and it is significant, although the Turks do not regard the city with any degree of veneration. The present town is large and contains about 15,000 inhabitants, of whom a fair proportion are Greek Christians. The remains of early Christian times are more numerous here than in any of the other Asiatic cities named by John. The ruins of no less than 25 churches are pointed out, while several marble pillars, almost entire, remind us of the apocalyptic reference, chapter 3, verse 12, probably to these very pillars. Its freedom from blame in the message to its angel, chapter 3, verses 7 to 13, is worthy of note in connection with the fact that it had the longest duration of any of the 7 cities named. Says the skeptic Gibbon, among the Greek colonies and churches of Asia, Philadelphia is still erect, a column in a scene of ruins, a pleasing example that the paths of honour and safety may sometimes be the same. 7. Laodicea was situated about 40 miles east of Ephesus, and derived its name from Laodice, wife of Antiochus II, the Syrian monarch. It was an exceedingly wealthy city, so much so that although overthrown by an earthquake in the reign of Nero, AD 62, it quickly recovered from the blow, and from its own resources soon assumed its pristine glory, and at the date of the apocalypse was a magnificent city. The assembly was infected with the gold fever, being rich and increased with goods. Chapter 3, verse 17. Pride, luxuriousness, and self-satisfaction characterized the general life of the population, and evidently stamped their character on the church as well. The pride of Laodicea has been humbled, its wealth scattered amongst strangers, and its splendour laid in the dust. The site of the once opulent city is a scene of utter ruin and desolation. The application. A special, but by no means exclusive, application of the first 3 chapters to the Asiatic assemblies named must be admitted. Thus, John greets the 7 assemblies which are in Asia, verse 4. He has them equally in view in verse 11, while to each of the 7 a special epistle is addressed, chapters 2 and 3. But while a primary application to the 7 Asiatic assemblies is undoubted, it is equally clear that they were representatives of the whole Church, not only at any given moment, but also in the successive moral stages of her history. After the 3rd chapter, we meet with no allusion to these Asiatic assemblies. He that hath an ear, let him hear what the Spirit saith unto the churches, 7 times repeated, intimates a direct application of these addresses to the individual hearer, also to every company of professed believers on the earth at any given time. The present day application is of immense value and profit. Questions have been raised as to John's ability, as a prisoner, to write and communicate with the assemblies. We hold that the Apocalypse as a whole was written in Patmos, and further that the 7 assemblies had each their respective epistles sent to them from thence. We see no reason for the supposition put forth by some that the visions were seen in Patmos and afterwards written in Ephesus on the seer's release from banishment under Nerva. The supernatural characterizes a large portion of the book, and hence difficulties disappear like melting flakes of snow. 7 golden lamps. Verse 12. I turned back to see the voice which spake with me, and having turned, I saw 7 golden lamps. The seer, on turning round to see the voice of the speaker, necessarily turned round to the east, the scene of immediate interest. The first object he beheld was 7 golden lamps. What these signified, we are informed in verse 20. The 7 lamps are 7 assemblies. The numerical value of the number 7 points to what is morally complete. Gold, the most precious of metals, signifies divine righteousness. The founding and the constitution of the Church, whether viewed in relation to Christ as his body or to God as his house, is the display of divine righteousness of the character of God. It could not be otherwise. In the symbol of 7 golden lamps, we have the Church in its completeness and perfection on earth, as in the thoughts of God, in its public position as his witness. It is not what the Church has become, but viewed in its origin and character as set up by him. While the whole Church is in view, it is here regarded as separate assemblies. The 7 golden lamps evidently allude to the 7-branched golden lampstand which stood at the south side of the outer compartment of the sanctuary of old. Here the lamps stand in the east. There the 7 lamps had 1 stem and 1 stand, while each lamp threw its clear light on the beautifully ornamented shaft or stem, discovering its beauties during the dark hours of night. Exodus 25 verses 31 to 40, Numbers 8 verses 2 to 4. So only in the divine presence are fully expressed the moral glories of Jesus, God's beloved Son. Here, each lamp rests on its own base. They represent separate and independent assemblies, each one in its place, responsible to cast its beams of light athwart the gloom. It is the serious and urgent responsibility of every professed company of saints to be in its own locality a witness for God, and what of course is true of local assemblies, is equally so of the Church universal. The 7 Asiatic lamps have long since been removed according to the divine threat, chapter 2, verse 5. And a similar judgment, although expressed under a different symbol, is about to overtake the professing church as a whole, Romans 11, verse 22. Where are the golden lamps today? This is a solemn and searching question for us all.